Okay, so here's the deal: is this year and next year are going to be really, really tumultuous, really insane. And I think this year is going to be worse than next year in terms of the possibilities for just traumatic types of change.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's every crisis there's an opportunity. So where do you want me? Do you want me to go month by month, or what do you figure?
Let's go season. Let's go
Season. Okay.
season.
Okay.
Season's kind of close enough. Because I feel
Okay.
like it's a good way for people to like deny anything's happening if it's like, oh, you didn't get the exact right date or something like that.
Yeah, I know. The thing is that yeah, I'm
Yeah.
I'm not with these dates. These are dates about like exact aspects. They're like exact formations.
Mm-hmm.
So like certain things, like a lot of these things with Pluto and these outer planets, like that trans-Neptunians, the ones that are really far out there, they're really like the big players in a lot of shit that's happening right now. And they move so slowly that we're already in the configurations. It's just that they become exact on these dates. And it does seem like the energy gets a little bit more acute. It ramps up and becomes sharper right then. So with Pluto, Pluto's so weird. It's like some of those dates, sometimes it can be like that. Sometimes it can be down to the week. Like something will, you can really feel it when it's in that exact place. But other things like Saturn, I don't really think so. So seasonally, March is bringing in two new placements, and there's just going to be a real different energy next month.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and it's going to be two really different kinds of things. Saturn's going into Pisces. That's very watery. It's very loose. It's really, really different than the way Saturn has been before. So a lot of structural things are going to feel like they're dissipating. Uh, there's been like very, very like a lot of sense of kind of rigid structure for the last like 5, 6 years. So when this COVID stuff went into effect, for example,
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot of lockstep. People really kind of got into it in a way that was a little bit frightening, right? For some people, it was like just how much people got into it. So with Saturn and Pisces, it's a little like that aspect of how things structure is going to be a little more emotional. Okay, skip ahead. Spring is when there's going to be a glimpse of the future because Pluto's moving into Aquarius, so we're going to get a really different feeling in the economy. Lots of stuff like where we're getting a sense of where things are going to be in the next decade, or maybe even the next 2 decades. And then Pluto's going to go back into Capricorn, where it's been since 2008. And it'll go back at the end of the spring. And then the summer is going to be really, really uh, a real wild ride. Lots of things happen,
Mm-hmm.
especially July, going to be super crazy. What you talked about, a pole flip that might
Yeah.
have it might actually happen. I mean, I wouldn't rule it out. It's that extreme, like the energy. I mean, what I think is more likely is war, uh, continuation and intensification of supply chain problems, and probably more nuclear tension. So like something that could actually happen with a nuke during that
Okay.
time. Anyway, man, where do you what
I
do you
think
think?
um I think the interesting thing could be the poles, or these kind of weather, we're getting into also solar weather too and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
if we want to go
So
down that road, because I think like that could happen, another a major something. You brought up the economy coming up into
yeah.
springtime, and then also something in July being cataclysmic. Um, Obviously, I think those things you would need to definitely touch on, and then also the forecast after that. What is after this cataclysm? What is the energy going to look like? Preceding that for the rest of the year.
Yeah,
Because
okay, so I want to be
yeah.
clear. It's like the cataclysmic spirit is kind of pervading the whole entire year
Mm-hmm.
and next year, and to a certain extent the rest of the decade.
Mm-hmm.
And with astrology, a lot of what we're looking at is it's the energy behind stuff. it's really very much more about the spiritual attunement of people as they're functioning in the world. And you can sort of look at natural disasters too through or cataclysmic natural events or global cataclysms through astrology, but it's a little harder to like see those things. You're going to see cultural shifts and cultural attitudes a lot more clearly than you're going to see the natural disasters.
Mm-hmm.
Like Uranus has been in Taurus for like 4 years, 5 years. Yeah, somewhere between 4 and 5 years. And it really, that should signal earthquakes. Like
Mm-hmm.
that really gives me a feeling of earthquake, that combination of Uranus and Taurus. But there really hasn't been, knock on wood, there really hasn't been, uh, at least where I am, I'm in the Bay Area, where we've been waiting for our cataclysmic earthquake, right? And there hasn't really been much activity.
Mm-hmm.
Different parts of the world, there are earthquakes, right? Like we had that big one in Syria, but that it's still not dramatically more than usual. So the natural stuff is a little hard to pinpoint. But this kind of tension, the kind of energy that we're going to have this summer is intense enough that the pole flip thing might happen. It might
Mm-hmm.
happen. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that's something I'm, definitely keying in on, and really feeling that there could be this, you know, um, event coming
Mm-hmm.
very soon, completely, expectedly and unexpectedly, in a sense.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, like, logic dictates that a pole shift should be imminent
Yeah.
because we know that the poles have shifted before and we don't really know what it entails, right? So, you talked to Ben from Suspicious Observers just recently,
Mm-hmm.
and he has kind of articulated maybe the most detailed vision of how it could play out, where the crust is separate from the mantle, right? That the surface of the earth is shifting and the inside is going a different way, and that the earth could actually shift 90 degrees and then shift back.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what he was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And that, the poles, whether they're going to reverse or whether they're just going to have a blip and go back to where they were. We know the magnetic poles are moving,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we know that the magnetic north is like moved way out. It's like outside of the Arctic Circle right now,
Yeah.
and it's on the move. So and the magnetic field surrounding the Earth is dropping, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all that stuff with polarity, despite what I just said, that as a thing. See, the astrology I think has a lot more to do with what we're witnessing as people and what we're experiencing as people on the planet. So for us to experience the pole shift is a little bit different than the earth to have the pole shift.
Mm-hmm.
So that idea of observing the poles flip or experiencing them flip, that to me kind of goes along with Eris, and that's like a Libra thing. Libra deals with polarity, and we've got a lot of activity that's coming up at the end of the summer and then later in October with Eris and with the lunar nodes. So that is kind of where I'm basing that idea.
Mm-hmm.
There's some points of like maximum tension in July.
Mm-hmm.
My expectation is a lot of this is playing out more in just the way people are behaving and the way that they're thinking,
Mm-hmm.
and globally, culturally, there's a lot more of I mean, we're like on the brink of a world war, and that's a big deal, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the pole shift is like I would rather have a see, myself personally, I would rather have a pole shift than have like a decade of more just like war rhetoric and like like the propagandized thinking, or COVID hysteria. I would rather have a pole shift than have that.
Yeah, I foresee that too. I don't think it'll get to that point where we're going into full nuclear war in a sense. I feel like that's too, for some reason, I do feel like that's too much almost in a sense because
Yeah.
it's too destructive. I feel like what could more happen is some sort of just major cataclysmic catastrophes that arise type of thing, as
Okay,
opposed
well,
to.
yeah. So I mean, I'm disagreeing in a certain
Mhm,
sense
mhm,
because there are these cultural vectors. There's these cultural trends, and they're very significant.
mhm,
I mean that's the country is like set on a course that is, the United States blew up the Nord Stream pipeline.
mhm.
That's a major thing that like no one's really talking about in this country, but we're going to get busted for that, and that's going to really be a major fall from stature for America globally, and there's going to be like major consequences for that here. And there's going to be huge shifts just in terms of hegemonic shifts and economic shifts around the world.
Yeah, yeah, I would totally agree with the
Mhm.
that there's definitely going to be conflict, and without a doubt, I'm thinking just in the terms of that the what the kind of the forecast looks like for July.
Mhm.
Does that actually indicate that that's going to be war related as opposed to externally related as to internal conflicts with certain countries, as like Ukraine or Taiwan or something like that?
Yeah, well, okay, so the reason that I'm seeing that stuff is through a square that's formed between Pluto and Haumea. That's a 90-degree angle that's formed between Pluto and another trans-Neptunian object called Haumea. And when Pluto and Haumea were conjoined together, uh, that means when Pluto was 90 degrees back, and it was with Haumea together when they were conjoined, we had the atomic bombs go off in Japan. So
Mm.
that was like the culmination of World War II. So when Pluto and Haumea are together, it's it has the potential to be very destructive. And just for various reasons related to those two archetypes, it can involve nuclear weaponry. So, a square between them is like no joke. It's like no
Okay.
laughing matter.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you're seeing it's going to be totally nukes then. Like there's no interpretation of it.
Okay, this is what I don't necessarily think there's going to be a nuclear holocaust
Hmm.
that ends life. I mean,
Hmm.
the thing is, if that happens, if
Then there, yeah.
if the world ends, then it's over, and there's the potential for that.
Hmm.
I think that there are a lot of people recognize that they don't really want that, but
Hmm.
there's also some really sick people that are in power. I mean, there's a lot of talk about using nuclear weapons, and there's just a general attitude. See, when people go into denial about stuff and they're not facing it and they're kind of dismissing the possibility of it, is when it's much more likely to happen than when people are
Hmm.
actually embracing the real consequences and examining the gravity.
Yeah.
So it's just, my common sense looking at what's happening combined with the astrology, these configurations of these trans-Neptunian planets. So I'm talking about Pluto. I'm talking about a lot of new discoveries that are not really that well understood generally in astrology, and a lot of times not even used. So
Hmm.
there's Eris, Haumea, Maki. There's several other ones. They're dwarf planets. Pluto's really tiny, but it has a lot of power. So with these things out there, they move very slowly, and they enter into certain configurations over a very long period of time. It's like the last time we had a square between Pluto and Haumea, it may I've been looking into it, trying to. I kind of can't believe if I'm right about this, but I did take some time and sort of comb back through, looked it up, and just it seems like the last time it happened was like 750 years ago. And it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm just talking about in any sign and anything like that, just having that
Yeah.
configuration.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, they're major things. So there's major.
There's going to be a major event happening.
Well, there's okay. Let's frame it this way. There have been major events happening.
Hmm.
So we're if we're in the United States, so we're talking about our position as people who are like, you know, fairly economically comfortable living in the United States. Life has been more or less the same for several decades,
Yeah.
but we can kind of feel that the security, the things that we rely on are the ground beneath our feet is kind of shifting away. And a lot of the reason for that on an astrological level is the configuration of these trans-Neptunians. They have a lot to do with hegemonic structures, the cultural power, basically, like the framework through which people view things.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had this American century, which is over, and people can say that, but they don't really understand the consequences of it because no one's been living with the consequences of it here.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in a place that's like economically down, if you're in kind of a third world, fourth world type situation, life is going to be the same, or it might actually get better in certain circumstances.
Yeah.
But if you're in the West, especially, hegemony is shifting away from the West towards the East.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's happening very rapidly this year.
Mm-hmm. It seems like at every level. So it's going to be like economic and
Yeah, I
just
mean,
it's every level. It's not just one monolithic thing of like, oh, this is just economic.
right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think the
Yeah.
economics shows up the most. It's one of the easiest things to track
Yeah.
because everybody's concerned about it. Everybody's got their attention on it every day. And so that's an area where we're gonna have our attention. We kind of know how to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's this thing blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline is a major. I mean, I'm 55. Okay, I can't think of any event that I'm aware of in my lifetime that the United States has done something like that that's that audacious and to get caught doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a real major shit because it's people are tired of people around the world are tired of the United States. That's just a reality. I don't say this stuff because I'm happy about it. I'm saying it because it's real. You
No,
know?
I agree with
Yeah.
you. I think the
Yeah.
US has kind of just put a lot of people in, in such a over the past I don't know, 100 kind of years of doing this how do you want to phrase this? Global policing, right? This kind of archetype that they've kind of tried to fulfill. It seems like you said, it seems like people are really tired of it, and that there's such a division internally in the United States from not only like the political level, but then the cultural level. It really speaks volumes to what's actually going on. That it's not just the issue's so complex in the sense that it's literally not just the U.S. being whatever. It's that it's eternally fracturing from the inside and out. That the whole U.S. is seemingly definitely going to change when you think about it. That we're definitely getting into the decade that the preceding future, the U.S. will be completely different
Yeah.
in terms of how things are structured, and you can see it. So I'm not surprised at all that you see that in the astrology because that's what everything's kind of been pointing to. From every angle you can kind of look at it, from the how politics are run to how social cohesion's, you know, uh, parsing out, and how everything's kind of rolling out in the U.S. lately in the past whatever, um, however far you want to go back. It's just been this rapid shift and then fractaling in different ways, and even thinking about like just how few, just like how I mean, we could get into this. I just feel that this is important, and I'll talk about this now. That how the military, if you didn't, if you weren't taking the jab, if you didn't get if they didn't
Mm-hmm.
force if you didn't take the jab, you'd get kicked out, and there's those things like that where there's been such a shift culturally in, I feel, the original um, kind of constitution and how the country should be run and how things should have kind of been just it's been so it's just and we know this. I knew obviously from like a deep state perspective has just kind of rotted the entire political system, and it's kind of just become so corrupt that there's not really much to save, unfortunately, anymore. In a sense. So it has to kind of, unfortunately, have this shift so then we can come out of it, and there's like, oh, there's going to be something good out of it. But yeah, I'm not surprised at all. I'm just obviously maybe under some sort of cognitive dissonance, thinking like, okay, maybe there might not be nukes, but there definitely might be nukes. And
Yeah, I
especially
feel
with
you,
the
man. Like
yeah
I don't really want to think about it because
yeah
it's but it just all the signs are indicating that. Um
especially in Taiwan. possibly too.
Yeah, that I'm less sure about, but that may be just because maybe I don't want to see it. But
Mhm.
I think it's less okay. The best possible outcome, in my view, would be for this country to basically go broke before we can make a move in East Asia.
Yeah.
That would be the best thing globally,
Mhm.
because the people who are running the military industrial complex, that the people that are getting rich off of war, they are so hungry for these global conflicts. They really want them. They're really desperate for them. And it's really corruption and greed within the American system that has fueled this more than anything.
Mhm.
You know, it's you've got to we like to think about you know, there's this idea about the Illuminati and kind of like these evil geniuses at the top of the pyramid who've got everything figured out. And I think the reality is that these people are not that bright, and that they, you know, they're patting themselves on the back, very self-congratulatory, say we know what's up, we know what we're doing. Whether it's the people in you know, the Swiss posse that's out there, right, with the little bald man, the German guy
Mhm.
Klaus, and he
Mhm.
wants to make plans for everybody to figure out, you know, how to control the world, or we're just some, you know, American executive who's connected with a weapons manufacturer who's, you know, getting rich beyond his wildest dreams and wants to just keep making more and more billions of dollars.
Mhm.
It's these people, they're just not that smart, you know, and but they're ensconced. They're in there within the halls of power, man. I mean, they're locked in. So they feel like they are in control of the world, but it's kind of getting out of control.
Yeah, they can definitely tell that they're losing any sense of submission that they once, I think, felt
Yeah,
that they would have the public, that okay, they could go into submission whenever we want and we can just say whatever and do whatever we want. And now it's finally realizing that, oh shit, they're kind of in, they're going to get in a lot of they don't have as much power as they thought they had, or in this
right.
power struggle, and always there's the opportunity to try to take more power, and take your rights away. There is that opportunity to basically, for us to take our own power back, in the same sense, when they have to try to give the opportunities to, take our power, we can take our power back.
Yeah.
And luckily, I think that actually has occurred, at some levels. I think at a lot of levels too, with even the compliance that was allowed, in certain states versus others, during the whole pandemic thing. It's so it's obviously, it's a balance thing where, some states, they got more power, and some states they lost power. But I think it really, what was good about it was it did wake a lot of people up, in a sense to where, you know, they can't really, when they try to pull stuff like that again, it's so obvious that they just, it's just like, it's so obvious that they're what they're trying to do, that they just instantly kind of, you can cognitively recognize you're full of it. And most people are usually wake up from it and don't submit. When they say, you're going to eat bugs and,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
extreme.
yeah,
Yeah, well,
yeah.
I mean,
And
I think COVID was a breaking point because I think that in the minds of uh, you know, this sort of pharma,
mhm.
like it's sort of like a quasi-military pharma military complex or whatever. You know,
Yeah,
I mean,
big
it's
pharma
the
is
pharma's
just,
big, it's big, you know, and in their eyes, I think they thought of this time period 2020, 2021, 2022. They thought it would be like when they kind of get everything together lined up the way they want it to be.
mhm,
And I think it's really annoying them that there's pushback, that there's people that aren't on board, and the information is not on their side.
mhm,
So I want to say this: with Pluto in Aquarius in March, coming in like almost on the vernal equinox, it's coming in on March 23rd, and it's going to be in Aquarius for a little less than 3 months. So if you're asking about the spring is going to be kind of owned by Pluto being in Aquarius. And
mhm,
Aquarius is about free transmission of information. Every sign has its benefits and its hindrances, you know, it's pluses
mhm,
and minuses. But when Pluto comes in brand new, we're going to Aquarius is very much about free transmission of information. It's also about having an antenna connected to the future,
Mm-hmm.
having attention on the future and being able to face the future.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the big difference between Capricorn, where Pluto's been for the last like 14 years,
Mm-hmm.
and Aquarius is that a Capricorn looks backward more often and Aquarius looks forward.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been kind of a lack of imagination or fear about what's coming. And I think what's cool with Pluto and Aquarius is there's going to be a feeling that we can face it and deal with it constructively.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just going to be these WEF agendas, where they want to create like these 15-minute cities, right? Where you can't go anywhere, you can't do anything. And there's definitely going to be a lot of movement towards that. There's going to be a big push to do that. But with Pluto in Aquarius, there's going to be a lot of individualized rebellion and a lot of willingness to take back autonomy and face those things.
Mm-hmm.
But there's going to be tons of information dumps. Okay, so this spring it's going to be like everything that people would try to hide for reasons related to securing power or maintaining power globally.
Mm-hmm.
There's a real strong chance of all that information coming to light and being freely transmitted during
Wow.
that time.
So now then, just as do you think then we're going to get a lot of I guess new information about COVID or new information about I think that's what I'm really thinking and feeling right now is some new information about COVID being revealed. Do you feel that too, in a sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the information is getting out there that there were a lot of problems with the pokes,
Mm-hmm.
and
Okay.
I don't know. The thing is, I don't know about the level of intentionality behind it. I think that a lot of it could be explained by that there was just too fast of a rollout, and there was too much money to be made. That could be what's behind everything. I mean, it's like kind of such a banal explanation for so many things is money. It's just like, oh God, so boring to hear that all over and over again, that's the reason. But there was so much money to be made. I mean, there were like tens of billions of dollars
Mm-hmm.
that were made, just like, unbelievable profits that
Yeah.
were especially for the executives at the top, just getting rich, 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 man, just pockets loaded down with ducats, like they can't walk because it's like the gold coins are like,
Yeah. They're
it's just,
just yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
laughing
Yeah.
all the way to the bank, man. So it's, it could just be that that's the motivating factor. But whatever the reason, I think that the downside to going that route of getting poke as a way to deal with COVID, that's really going to start to become common knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of it's on the verge of it right now, but I mean, it's like the people that don't want to hear it will probably be forced to hear it.
That's what I mean. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I think that's actually a perfect way of putting it
Yeah.
because a lot of the information has come out essentially. It was kind of out, even in the beginning and it was covered up initially. That's the whole, the point that I was that I, kind of knew that was like, okay, the information that they have is kind of being covered up about it. And it feels like exactly how you put it, like basically the regular person who hasn't heard the information is going to start to actually hear the information that's been hasn't been talked about, that some people kind of know and talk about, but that it's just going
Right.
to come out more. That there's just I mean it's almost its own huge topic to cover. I mean it's
It is.
unfortunate.
Yeah.
I
I
mean
mean, but
it's
it's
because we're almost just covering like a forecast of what's to come, but in a sense that this is potentially kind of the big um, information drop that you could be seeing in the astrology, that this could
it,
be the big information drop that really shifts things in a
yeah. Aquarius is all about free transmission of information. I've said that I think 3 or 4 times at this point. I'm just repeating myself, but it really is. And
yeah.
so with Pluto is on its way into staying in Aquarius for 20 years.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So during that time, I just the idea of a totalitarian state where people don't know what's going on, I just don't see how that's possible with that configuration.
Mm.
Because it's just a Aquarius has a very anarchic type of a spirit to it. It has kind of two sides. There's the part that's very impersonal. So the idea of like you'll own nothing and be happy, and somebody with this idea and trying to implement it without much sensitivity or awareness of the the drawbacks to it and just sort of pushing into the future. That's sort of Aquarian too.
Mm-hmm.
But then the spirit of rebellion that would break through that. You know, Aquarius just really likes to go against the grain no matter what. So it's like the fact that what these guys are doing is really unpopular, it's not going to bother them. At the same time that the people are going to be pretty bold in the FU back to any powers that are trying to control them. It's going to be a very contentious time, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. However, I do want to say this is that it's going to go back into Capricorn at the end of the spring, and it's going to stay there for the rest of the year.
And then it's going to go back into Aquarius next year?
Yeah, it goes back into Aquarius in January of 24.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, these 2 years are kind of like a yin yang as far as like Pluto in Cap and Aquarius. So it's been in Cap for 14 years. Big picture, it goes into Aquarius for like 20 years. In rounding it off, it's like 14, 15 years and then 20 years. But it has this period of time where it's going retrograding and going forward and backward, wiggling back and forth over the boundary, the border between the two signs. And that's when stuff is really, you get a lot of anxiety about that shift. The last time it happened was, you know, like 06, 07, 08. So Pluto was in Sag and going into Capricorn. Sagittarius is very optimistic. It sort of believes the future is going to be brighter than today. And so Sag and Aquarius both have this thing in common where they're very attuned to the future. Capricorn is not like that. Capricorn wants proof of what's happening right now and doesn't really like to bet big on the future. It likes to look at what's worked in the past. And the weird thing is, economically, it led to a lot of get rich quick cycles because it doesn't like to make long range forecasts. So people are looking to profit very quickly off of anything. It's a weird thing because Cap as a sign is very responsible. It's very together, but Pluto always burns things out. It always kind of does a crash and burn and a rebirth. So the stock market crashed in Capricorn. Doesn't really like being in Capricorn that much. It's a weird combination because Cap is materialistic. It's an earth sign. Cap people usually know how to get rich. It's like most of the Cap people I know, Capricorn people I know, they're good at getting rich or they're trying real hard to get rich. You know, it's like they like to work for it and make money, and usually they're pretty responsible, like they make it in an honest way. But some reason that combination of Cap and Pluto has created this kind of perverse economy. You know, like it's like brought out some of the worst aspects of capitalism. And I'm not saying that I'm a communist or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. There's totally,
it's just it brought out the worst aspects of it.
Yeah.
So when we go back into Cap, that's when I think things are going to be rough because we're going into Aquarius for a little while, and then we spend the rest of the year in Capricorn. Then 24 we go into Aquarius for most of the year. Then we dip back into Capricorn for like a couple of months in the fall of 24, and by the end of 2024 we're going to be in Aquarius. Then for the next, we'll fully transition into Aquarius for the next 20 years. So it's that transition period is going to be weird. So I think 24 will probably be a lot clearer, and because that Aquarian signal is going to be stronger, it's going to be there longer. But this spring is going to be, you know, I can't, like I say, I can't quite pinpoint it to the day, but I am pretty confident that we will feel the effects of it, at least, you know, to the week.
Yeah.
It's not. It's even though these things move really slow, it's not that hard to notice when there's a big change.
So then going straight into then the forecast for then you know, late summer, fall, what do you predict that's going to then kind of look like?
When Pluto goes back into Cap, that's the end of the spring. We got a few different moments here that are worthwhile, that are worth pointing out. Pluto starts to retrograde May 2nd. So it'll be in Aquarius, but it'll turn around and go backwards May 2nd. Then we get Jupiter goes into Taurus in the middle of May 16th. And a lot of people are looking forward to that. And I think that could be really cool. Jupiter's usually viewed very positively, sometimes a little bit overly so. Like people don't look at sort of everything has its pluses and minuses.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like everywhere on Earth, someone's having the best day of their life, no
Yeah.
matter what.
Yeah.
You know, so and there's someone's having the worst day of their life, no matter how good it is for thousands of other people and millions of other people. But we get this grand cross, means like you've got everything lined up 90 degrees. So you've got like corner to corner to corner.
Mm-hmm.
Crosses, squares, 90-degree angles are like the key aspect of conflict. So when you get four things set up where they're the corners of a box, right? So you've got four 90-degree angles stuck together like that. Two things opposing each other one way and two things opposing each other the other way. That's a lot of stress comes out of that. But at the same time, it's
Mm-hmm.
like squares force people to cope. They force people to deal. They force people to address things. So you get there's two meanings of cope now, right? So like there's cope like the positive thing where you're adapting, and there's cope like the way it's used, right? Like where it's like now it's like you're in denial.
Yeah, yeah. That's such a
My
yeah.
generation of people don't know that. So like if I
Yeah, no,
said
that's
that to
such a
some,
Zoomer. That's such a
yeah,
my generation thing of being like, oh, dude, that's cope, and it's like, yeah, yeah, no,
right.
you're coping, man, no, and I'm
But
like, no,
it's kind of cool. Yeah, it's like I get what the why that you know. Yeah, yeah.
it's funny, yeah, but no, yeah, cope is usually in my generation considered like you're totally just in denial of, like, I would be like, let's say a nuke does drop in July 15th. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, and then the whole time I was like, oh no, it's just going to be an earthquake. I was coping, for these next couple
Right,
months, this
right. It's a
entire
cope.
time.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah,
cope.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
um,
Yeah, so we get this grand cross with Jupiter, Mars, Pluto, the south node. Yeah, so Pluto goes square to the lunar nodes. Lunar nodes are like a weird. It's the alignment of how eclipses are formed is through the lunar nodes.
mhm.
So it's a thing that's on a different track than everything else in astrology. It's moving backwards while everything else is moving forwards. But the eclipses, people, I'm not that great with eclipses. I mean, there's like thousands of people that cover eclipses. So there's always somebody who's going to be way better at that than I am.
Mhm.
But they usually are kind of like trigger points
Mhm.
for bigger things. So we've got, we have a lunar eclipse in early May, but I just don't see it as being that profoundly connected to stuff. There's a much bigger eclipse that's coming in October. And that's going to be kind of like the coda. It's going to be like the summation of everything, like from this year. Then
Mhm.
after that, I don't really see anything super significant. Whatever's the big events that are happening, I think they're going to happen between now and October.
Okay.
Or more specifically between like April and October, between the end of March and October.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
And
So we
then,
haven't had. Go ahead. Sorry.
oh no, no, no. That's interesting because I see March being obviously the coming of the new year, traditionally with Aries being the first sign and
Yeah.
cyclic out. So and then what then do you see there kind of then being after October being this main cataclysm in a sense, and not in a main cataclysm, but like this main. Does it kind of like finale in October, or is it more in July? You see it.
Yeah. I think
Um,
July is going to be more stressful.
okay, and
And
then
pardon?
no, no, and then just in um, and then in November, December, it's nothing's pointing out as
I
being
mean,
as
I think that basically people will be looking back at the year,
yeah.
those last couple months, and going like, "Holy fucking shit!"
Mm-hmm.
It's okay if I swear, right?
Yeah, of course, of course.
Okay, cool. I just, yeah, people will be very like they'll be regrouping,
Mm-hmm.
and like I said, like a pole flip is a really hard thing for me to call, but there are things here that make me think that it might be. I mean, it is going to happen at some point. It might happen this year. Um, I've got my mind a lot more on the things that the choices that people are making,
Mm-hmm.
that humanity's making. So it just seems like a time where we're oh, okay. So, sorry, I don't want to get lost on this point.
No,
I
we're
think
good.
when Pluto goes back into Capricorn uh, this summer, I really hate to say this. I mean, I really hate to say this, but I think we're probably going to get a return of COVID hysteria.
Do you think it could be a new type of virus or bacteria?
I think it's going to, I mean, because we know already that they're trying to make worse forms of COVID.
Yeah.
Like that's already been called out. Like even in America, like at some of the universities, like they've got people in labs trying to make, they're trying to combine like the transmissibility, like the contagion levels of Omicron with like the severity of the original strains, like the things that came before Delta that went like deep down into your lungs. I mean, what it's just people. It's just like what? Why do people do this shit? It's like it's just like it's just the mentality behind it is it's real. It's just like the absurdity level is hard to fathom, but yeah.
And now that's something potentially I didn't even think about because it's kind of already happened in my mind, and I'm thinking, oh, they're going to do something new, but it might just be some sort of new bio weapon leak. I've that could be it's it's its own in a sense nuclear bomb in a sense, right? Like if
Mm-hmm.
there's some sort of 90% kill rate bacteria, it's that's kind of like a nuke.
Yeah, these people are not very imaginative.
Mm-hmm.
They tend to just keep trying to do the same things over and over again. Like they'll when people are being propagandized for war, they recycle the same stories. They just put them on different countries. They say the same stuff over and over again. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's stuff that they do that just they could get away with it when there was no internet. So it's
Yeah.
like very frustrating for people that are into this kind of like bullshit, like but the T square, right? So you've got Haumea and Eris in opposition to each other, and then you got Pluto in a T square both of those other planets. And that's a really crazy configuration. I don't know when is the last time that happened. It could be like thousands of years. It's really hard to say. I mean, doing the research on it is kind of difficult because
Mm-hmm.
Eris and Haumea are both somewhat obscure. So I have to kind of like dig into an ephemeris, which is a chart of the placements, and I have to kind of go through like in like 50-year increments, go through century to century and sort of see where they're going. And I haven't found. I mean, I don't know when the last time they were like that. It could have been before the time of Christ, whatever. Could have
Yeah,
been.
so we're talking about a long time ago, like a very significant
Yeah,
event in a
yeah.
sense.
It's something about that T square. I think had a lot to do with the COVID crisis because that T square started forming like around maybe 2014. It's coming. It hasn't been perfect. It's kind of like there's three different aspects there, right? So there's an opposition between Haumea and Eris. There's a square between Pluto and Eris, and a square between Pluto and Haumea. And so they're not forming an exact T where all three of those things are happening at exactly the same time. They're coming in different stages. So first there was the opposition between Eris and Haumea, which is really hard to analyze that very thoroughly because those are two planets that are just now sort of being understood. Eris I know pretty well. Haumea is a little more mysterious, but that square with Eris and Pluto, that was exact, like all during the peak points of the COVID crisis. And you could really track the most tense times of the COVID crisis around the world to this square between Eris and Pluto. Then we've got this square between Pluto and Haumea. Sorry, I know I don't want to get lost in the jargon. I'm just saying that
Mm-hmm.
um, Haumea seems to be connected with the actual physical, the science, the actual like biological stuff that's happening with the
Mm-hmm.
virus. I do think that COVID is like it has some sort of mutative effect on people.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it does. It not only has the virus, but yeah, people who go onto this hyper conspiratorial spectrum and say that it's not real, I think that's a little too far for me. I'm gonna be honest on that line. I think it is a real virus, to a
Yeah,
degree.
yeah, yeah.
That's going off on the it's a little too hard. And for me too, I think it really is the mRNA really is a thing. I think what happened also was I'm just gonna be
Hmm.
kind of,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
in my opinion, I think there's different potentially different batches of mRNA. Well, we know there's different companies that make different mRNA shots, so it's like there's different. They're going to have different reactions of people who had COVID, obviously with it. So we're getting into this very mutative state where I don't even know where I'm going with this, but I think there's going to be a lot of different variation where the virus itself can react to certain things differently. Do you know what I'm trying to say here? Or
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I think it's unknown. Like, there's at least different theories
Mm-hmm.
about just what viruses are and how they work. And I know people that don't think viruses really create disease, and I don't know. I don't really know what to say. I go. What do you want to say? Go ahead.
No, just because I do think that viruses are like a thing, but I do
Hmm.
think that from what I kind of know from, or what I've experienced internally from Chinese medicine that I've practiced and kind of studied in initially, and then what I've known from people I've talked to and what I've known from everything. Obviously, medicine and minerals and ivermectin and stuff like that help, but I do think it's always us in a sense. So then when we get COVID, it's our own traumas coming out in a sense
Hmm.
in like a shamanic demonic form where it's just our own thing basically manifesting from a virus perspective. And now, yeah, that's kind of my take and opinion on what viruses are. I think they're very real, obviously, but I think they
Yeah.
are basically like transferred traumas, and they're not actually like as we would initially taught how to perceive them. They're much more
Yeah.
metaphysical in a sense, and much more if you have good enough energy. This essentially you're not going to be affected by them. So
Yeah.
as new agey as that sounds, where it's like raising your frequency,
Right.
the a lot of the people who are extremely clean and meditate all day, they don't get sick for a very specific reason. Like and then we've seen obviously the more traumas people have, just the more like sickly they look and become. Obviously, like, you'll see those memes of people who go to war and then like before war and after war, and they're just like so sunken in and because they've seen so much and they're so destroyed. So it's almost like a way of interpreting it. And we know that obviously that you can, I mean, this is not even a contentious statement that your perception of how cancer, if you get cancer, and if you're positive about it, you will have statistically better outcomes being positive about beating certain illnesses. And knowing the people who I've known who have like autoimmune disorders and have these certain illnesses, it does seem to be at definitely some level mentally based. Once it metastasizes inside your body, I think then you have to treat it with certain diet, certain
Hmm.
exercise, certain practices physically. But once before then, I think it is a lot of um, a mental strife and mental struggle internally, mentally, not actually um, physically as a virus. Just personally noticing, and I think but yeah, it's a lot in Chinese medicine too. I think just how even how much also we tax ourselves, our eyes and our ears, and how much everything we do and the stress level that modern society conduces us to really is like another way of suppressing our internal virus level overload because then we everything is so everything all the food now causes so much inflammation that it's just
Right.
everything is just creating this way to lower our thing to where we get virus overload and then something will happen. You'll get some sort
Yep.
of disease and something.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Totally.
yeah,
Totally. I've been cluing into that more and more,
mm-hmm.
and that and I think that there were these discoveries of these trans-Neptunian objects. Okay, that these things they've been discovered like since 2000. Pluto was for a long time we thought was the only one out there, and then since we found these other ones, it's correlated to shifts in awareness pretty big shifts in awareness, you know, and it's almost been like too much at once, even for people who practice astrology, even for them to take it in and be able to understand how these different planets are working, because it's like been such an overwhelming thing. It's like a big paradigm shift, and a lot of what you're talking about, these types of awarenesses are coming more into common knowledge. This that way of looking at nutrition and illness and everything, like you just said,
Mm-hmm.
is coming on a lot more. And I think Haumea as a planet, um, is something about it is sort of its connection to humanity is like it's very much a planet that's related to biomorphic kind of resonance and like biomorphic activities, and it connects humanity to the rest of the biome. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we see ourselves as being separate, but we know we're not.
Mm-hmm.
We've got this cultural interface that's very complex that sort of separates us from the other animals and from plants and everything, and the planet itself in a weird
Mm-hmm.
way. You know, we have a kind of we culturally we've especially in the West, you know, we have this kind of antipathetic relationship with the earth.
Yeah.
You know, we're kind of like battling it and trying to subdue it and control it and exploit it.
Mm-hmm.
And how Maya's got is a kind of its energy somehow is a kind of a check on that. So I think that Haumea would be connected with the biological aspects of code, which I think are real. Um, and then there's Eris, which is much more about social cohesion and that process of sharing, and that's really much more at the forefront in the mind of people. Where Haumea is a little bit alien to our way of thinking; it's a little hard for us to get. Eris is much more connected with processes of sharing, tribal awareness, explorations of ethics and morality, and just understanding yourself the way you're seen by other people, so you can actually function together socially with
Mm-hmm.
people. So these are new kinds of awareness that are really coming into the world very strongly at this time. And Pluto is a little different. It's kind of the identity of Pluto globally is a lot more connected to the way that life was in the 20th century. So it's much more about consolidating everything kind of in one place, all the power being focused in one point. And so that centralization of power that is a Plutonian thing, that kind of lines up with the US empire, the global empire, and having one center for that. So we got these military bases all over the world, right, as extensions of this global hegemonic power, the United States. There isn't really another country that has bases all around the world like that. That there, you know, China has a few. You know, I heard that
Mm-hmm.
there's a secret Chinese police station in California. I mean, did you hear
Okay.
that?
No, no, I haven't heard that.
Yeah. I mean, you hear things all the time, and it's like
Yeah.
some of them are ridiculous. Okay, like the balloon thing was totally fucking ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I mean, it is. It's something invisible from the naked eye that there's no ability to guide it or control it. I mean, you have to just want to believe that that's a spy, like that's a espionage. To you have to project a belief system onto that for that to have any validity. You know, other than just the fact that it was just a fucking accident where a balloon got loose and drifted over here, like that. Those things do happen,
Mm-hmm.
right? But there could be like a real, you know, so I'm getting lost in the weeds. I mean, it's just basically like different countries like Russia, China, any place you want to think of, they may have little outposts or extensions of power, but they don't have anything close to what the United States has.
Mm-hmm.
And we're moving towards kind of a multipolarity. This thing that is this archetype that's more contained within Eris, which is about a sharing process, is much more going to come into the fore.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the road to get there is going to be really rough because of this configuration, this T squares, like they're all battling and duking it out. So with these things, see these these three things combined, I think created the COVID crisis, because you've got Pluto and Capricorn, you've got this really uptight governmental hierarchical thing just coming down on people, making them lock down, making them do all these things that stop them from being able to share, right? And then you've got Eris over in Aries representing the individual autonomy that's like wants to, we want to be able to mix freely. We want to be able to do things. We want to be able to people, what thing you learn with COVID is if you're isolated, if you can't share, you basically die. I mean, like you can't just live in a box, like and think you're preserving your health. Like, oh, I'm not leaving home. Okay, every time I go out, I'm all protected everywhere, and I don't.
Yeah, and all the chemicals that you have to use to sanitize. I mean, those are proven to just they're all the cleaning chemicals that we use are proving that they cause cancer. All the stuff that all the plastics. If you leave a plastic water bottle out in the sun, it's like all these things that they're finally admitting that these where we really have to have a back to nature moment, because basically everything we've done and create kind of does create this reverse effect on you and does destroy you inevitably. So it's not even like it's a choice. It's like this is just going to destroy you, or we just choose to go back to nature. So it's not even like really a choice in a sense. It's like
right.
You can have a choice and you can have this false perception of a choice, but it's like you're choosing destruction one way, or I mean, you could choose destruction. I guess people are.
Yeah, well, it's like hand sanitizer, right? Killing the protective biome. Like it's just it doesn't. It's a strategy that doesn't work.
Yeah.
But we're going to come back to this. So this configuration is kind of breaking up. Like I'm sorry, man. I'm trying to explain this thing, and I don't want to have it be like become too
no,
pedantic.
It's fine. I think we're only at like an hour, so we're good. We're doing good so far.
Okay, we're doing better than we were last time.
Yeah. We're on it, so I can already edit.
This,
Like,
for
so
anybody that's watching, this is the second go round because it was just such an avalanche of shit the last time I was talking.
And dude, we could always do 2 episodes too. You know that, right?
We could just cut this.
We could just cut it because okay, we'll just kind of pause real quick. Wait, hold up.
Yeah, you want to
record
this? Yeah,
right. Again, and
this T shape doesn't form exactly at the same time. It's kind of been like different parts of it coming together at different times, and it's starting to break apart because Eris is so slow moving that it's falling behind, and it's sort of distorting the T shape, and it's falling out of that thing, and then we're going to end up with just a square between Pluto and Haumea. And then eventually that's going to end. So it sort of came together slowly and it's disintegrating slowly. However, we're going to come back as close to exact as we've been this summer. I thought it was over because I was like looking at different pieces of it and stuff, and I was feeling like, okay, well, we're out of it, but really we're not, because we come back 2 degrees from exact between Pluto and Eris at the same time that we are exact between Pluto and Haumea. And it's like the different components of it talk louder at different times, but this summer is when all 3 components are going to be talking the loudest. Yeah. So and so that all that shit was peaking before. The last time we really had that was 2020, 2021. That was like the peak, and it started to kind of disintegrate, and then it's coming back for one last kind of, one last party, one last big lockdown party.
Yeah.
So there could be a war, but the thing is, it's just like it corresponded so much to COVID before that I kind of think it's more likely that we'll go back to one more completely whacked out COVID thing. Is that this time around, the thing is that people they're not going to want to get vaxxed. They're not, no, there's too much information out there that it's too much of the risk benefit is not there. The people are not going to be incentivized. So they're going to try forcing people extra hard. If that happens, they're going to try to throw a really nasty virus at people to make them, more afraid, oh, now I've really got to do it. Yeah, it's going to be weird. It's going to be a weird time, but we'll see the other side of it too, so.
Yeah.